to Minority Whip John Thune on how that vote is shaping up in the Senate. Senator, thank you very much for joining us. So where do things stand at this hour?
Well, it's not real clear, Sandra. The House has acted, so the legislation is headed toward the Senate. The Democrats in the Senate attempted to hotline a bill, in other words, to expedite its consideration. That has been objected to, and we'll see now as negotiations get underway about what the path forward might be in the Senate. But what I can tell you is there's a lot of consternation among Republicans in the Senate that we're in this position in the first place. Republicans don't believe that this is a role for Congress. This is something that should have been worked out, negotiated, and that the administration, the president, prior to the election, who punted this until after the election, is now trying to get members of Congress to bail him and his administration out for their failure to get this deal done. So there's a lot of conversations still to be held, and how this ultimately gets disposed of in the Senate, I think, is still an open question.
Senator, where do you stand on things? Some of your colleagues have indicated that they will not support what they see as a deal for the union bosses rather than the railroad workers themselves. So are you in favor of it?
Well, I don't want to see a rail strike, a shutdown for sure. But the one thing I will say, and this is something that's a lot of our members are discussing, is the possibility that one option here would be to extend the cooling off period for 30 days or 60 days or whatever that term would be, to force the parties back to the table to get a deal that everybody could sign off on, so that Congress isn't forced to be put in a position. I don't think, to your question about the particulars of the deal, that it's the role of Congress. I certainly am not going to support any amendments that go in and try and micromanage this deal. This is an agreement, obviously, that's been negotiated for the past 3 years between the railroads and the unions, and of course now most lately with the Biden administration's blessing. But I don't think Congress wants to get into the weeds and start negotiating the fine points of these agreements between management and labor.
But as you know, this could be thrown off, and there could be a full-on strike. What do you believe are the economic implications? What's at risk here?
Well, that's a big issue. I mean, and I represent a state that's very dependent upon railroads. Freight railroads are the best way to ship bulk commodities, and we have a lot of bulk commodities. We're an agricultural state, so the consequences of a shutdown would be catastrophic, and that has to be avoided. The question is, what's the best way to do that? And again, a lot of our members are coming to the conclusion that the best way to conclude this is, again, to force the parties back to the table.
Okay, we'll keep watching it. Senator, appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Sandra.
Senator, if you could stand by with us, because we are going to hear from one of those unions in just a second, but we want to turn to one other topic before you go. Our own Peter Doocy questioning White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre on what the White House meant when she said that the White House is keeping a close eye on Twitter. Listen to this.
When you say that you're going to be monitoring some of the speech on there, if you see something that you don't like, would you try to shut Twitter down?
So look, when you talk about monitoring, it is, I hate to break it to you, Peter, just like everybody else, we very much monitor the news. We pay close attention to everything that you all are reporting, and Twitter's in the news a lot. And so that's what we're paying attention to.
How did you interpret that, Senator?
Well, I don't know how to interpret that. I mean, it's not the White House's job to moderate the content that goes on social media platforms. Clearly, and I'm somebody who believes in more transparency for big tech, for social media platforms, that they need to inform customers and consumers about the use of algorithms, opaque algorithms, to influence or manipulate the content that people see. But I certainly would not want the White House determining what is and isn't acceptable in terms of content to be put on these platforms, and that certainly seemed to be the implication of what was being said there.
Senator Thune, appreciate you joining us. Thanks again.
Thanks, Sandra.
Okay.